war 1976 8. Platz damals in Mosport mit einer gebrochenen Radaufhängung, trotzdem im Ziel gewesen. Aber wie gesagt, alle Serien, auch die negativen, müssen irgendwann einmal aufhören. Und heute in Montreal Niki Lauda, wie gesagt, auf dem 8. Startplatz. Pole Position hat Nelson Piquet, der Weltmeister, der hier vor 2 Jahren auf der Strecke von Montreal zum ersten Mal mit dem BMW Turbo gewonnen hat. Für Piquet ist es die 3. Trainingsbestzeit in diesem Jahr, die 11. seiner Karriere, für Brabham die 32. Neben Nelson Piquet in der ersten Startreihe steht Alain Prost, dessen Führung der Weltmeisterschaft heute nicht gefährdet ist. Zweite Reihe De Angelis und Warwick im einzigen Renault, weil Patrick Tambay wegen seines Wadenbeinbruches nach dem Freitagtraining auf eine weitere Rennbeteiligung, auf einen weiteren Einsatz verzichten musste. Dann haben wir Arnoux und Alboreto, Menzel und Lauda, Senna und De Cesaris, Chiva und Winkelhock, Esno und Patrese, Rosberg und Fabi, Lafitte, Butzen, Ginzani, Cecotto, Brandl, Bellow, Sura, Rottengarter, Seckwell, 2 Neuleute im Grand Prix-Spurt und den Franzosen Alliot. Darf ich Ihnen kurz den Kurs Gilles Villeneuve vorstellen? Bei Start und Ziel fahren die Fahrer dann im Rennen mit ungefähr 285 Kilometer pro Stunde vorbei. Jetzt im 3. Gang 180. Wieder beschleunigen. 4. Gang, 5. Gang. Dann zurück in den 4. 200. 2. Gang für die folgende Haarnadelkurve. Hier ein Kurvengeschlänge. Geschwindigkeit im Rennen dann um die 100 Kilometer pro Stunde. Und das ist jetzt die erste der beiden Haarnadeln, wird im 1. oder 2. Gang gefahren, je nachdem mit einer Geschwindigkeit von 80 Kilometer pro Stunde. Die Strecke ist sehr, sehr rutschig, sehr bucklig, sehr schmutzig. Es gibt große Probleme mit den Reifen, weil die wenigsten Fahrer hier im Training optimale Bodenhaftung finden konnten. Sogar in einem PS-schwachen Tyrrell Ford haben im 5. Gang noch die Räder durchgedreht. 3., 4., 3. Gang 120, 4. Gang. Ich habe leider andauernd Bildstörungen. Ich hoffe, Sie zu Hause, meine Damen und Herren, können den Grand Prix mitverfolgen können. Und die Fahrer jetzt auf der Gegengeraden, das ist eine sehr, sehr lange Gerade. Die Geschwindigkeit hier ungefähr 280, 285 Kilometer pro Stunde. Der Kurs des Trainingsschnellsten, Nelson Piquet mit dem Brabham-BMW 185,810 Kilometer pro Stunde. So, und das ist jetzt die berühmte Haarnadel, die wieder auf eine der eher kürzeren Geraden hinleitet. Insgesamt ist es hier sicherlich etwas leichter zu überholen als vor 2 Wochen im Grand Prix von Monte Carlo, aber die Geraden sind doch nicht lange genug, um ein Überholen wirklich absolut problemlos zu ermöglichen. Zufahrt auf die letzte Kurve, Zielkurve, 1. Gang 70 Kilometer pro Stunde. Hier hat sich Alain Prost im Freitagtraining gedreht, sonst hätte er eine Zeit von 1,25 fahren können. So war seine Zeit von knapp unter 1,27,5. Und Alain Prost hat mit seinem Teamchef, mit Ron Dennis, gewettet, wenn er 1,27,5 fahren könne, dann würde ihm Ron Dennis für das ganze Wochenende sämtliche Telefonspesen bezahlen. Und wer weiß, wie viel Prost immer zu telefonieren pflegt, der kann ungefähr messen, was diese Wette für McLaren und auch für Alain Prost bedeutet hat. 26 Autos am Start, WM-Lauf Nummer 7, bis jetzt 6 Rennen, 5 Siege für den McLaren-TAG Turbo, davon 3 für Alain Prost und 2 für Niki Lauda. Prost in der 1. Reihe an 2. Stelle, Niki Lauda in der 4. Reihe an der 8. Position. Es wird ein sehr langes, ein sehr heißes Rennen. Alles kann in diesem Rennen passieren.
Starter giving the flag and the race is on. Into turn number 1, which is a left-hander, now into turn number 2, a right-hander. They'll go down a short straightaway here, coming right at you before setting up for turn number 3, which is a right-hand turn. Now moving into turn number 4, and again down a straightaway, and this is one of the longer straightaways on the course. times, the speeds that have been turned in here, right around 170 miles an hour. Now into turn number 5 and 6, a series of S's here before heading for turn 7, which leads to turn number 8. That is one of the 2 hairpin turns. And a challenge for the lead as Piquet moves to the inside and takes over first spot.
Tremendous move on the inside of that particular passing area. Nelson always looking for any room whatsoever where to stick that Brabham nose.
Piquet leading now down into turn number 10. Again onto a straightaway. And this is the area of the race course that will be known as the back stretch. This is the longest stretch that they'll be going through. Now into turn number 14. And into turn number 15. Then again, a short straightaway leading down to and under the Parmalat Bridge. And then downshifting, braking hard for the hairpin, turn number 16, and the completion of 1 lap. They come down in front of us for the first time. There are 70 laps in the Canadian Grand Prix, and Nelson Piquet still is the leader. Alain Prost running second. Alboreto is third. A battle for 4th between Arnoux and Helio De Angelis.
Nelson was just a little bit slow off the line at the start of the race, but now he's showing his qualifying speed in these opening laps and actually pulling away from Alain Prost.
Some of the drivers that are starting toward the rear that we want to keep our eye on, at least here in the broadcast booth. Keke Rosberg, former world champion who started in 15th, moved up 1 spot on that first lap, now running in 14th position. Martin Brundle, one of the Tyrrell drivers, the normally aspirated car, started 21st, moved up to 16th, and Stefan Beloff in the other Tyrrell started 22nd, moved up 1 spot to 21st. Now, these normally aspirated engines don't perform as well, of course, as the turbocharged engine as far as speed is concerned, but a couple of things they do, and that is they're a little bit more reliable, and they, of course, don't consume the fuel that the turbocharged engines do.
That's a good point, and fuel means weight in these cars. The turbocharged cars have to carry a full load of 220 liters, where the normally aspirated engines can start with quite a bit less fuel, saving weight. Power to weight ratio equals speed during the race.
We're on lap number 2 of the Canadian Grand Prix. Nelson Piquet is leading over Alain Prost, Alboreto, and Arnoux teammates running in 3rd and 4th position. Here comes Piquet. As you can see, has 10 victories and 85 starts. Moving through the hairpin once again, turn 16, down in front of us for time number 2, and once again into turns number 1 and 2, straight away headed for turns 3 and 4. Nelson Piquet leading the Brazilian driver. Nelson, 31 years of age, a 2-time world champion in 1981, and of course last year in 1983. Last year, John, not necessarily a good year in terms of wins for Nelson Piquet, but he was very consistent throughout the year.
Tremendous reliability, picking up his points by finishing 3rd and 4th. Also a couple very nice victories. But Nelson last year won the World Championship on dependability, which is a bit strange this year because he has yet to finish a Grand Prix. The BMW Formula 1 engine, which was so reliable last year, has been plagued with small technical troubles. In the French Grand Prix, all 5 BMW cars went out within, correction, all 4 BMW powered cars went out within 5 laps of one another. But it seems now that they have things well in hand here in Canada.
Nelson, the only race that Nelson Piquet has finished this year was the Belgian Grand Prix, in which he finished 10th. There are the first 4, Piquet, Prost, Alboreto, and René Arnoux. They move once again into the hairpin, turn number 16. We complete 3 laps here. 70 laps will make up this Canadian Grand Prix, named in honor of Gilles Villeneuve, who I have come to learn in my short stay here in Canada was almost a national hero in this area of the country.
He was their national, international hero, a sportsman and a real competitor, someone that represented the sport and his country in the best way possible, and an extremely, extremely quick Canadian driver. Missed here by everyone.
And of course, Jacques Villeneuve, as we take a replay of some action in the pack, and once again go to the leader, Nelson Piquet. Jacques Villeneuve, who is Gilles' brother, of course, is a competitor this year in the IndyCar circuit, and he will be among those competing later this afternoon here on ESPN in the Portland 200 from Portland, Oregon for IndyCars. By the way, the first 8 qualifiers for that race, Mario Andretti will be on the pole, Danny Sullivan alongside. Second row, Guerrero and Andretti. Third row, Daly and Mears. And the fourth row, Teo Bobby and Bobby Rahal. We'll be back with more from the Canadian Grand Prix. Right now, Nelson Piquet is the leader.
Arnoux und Alboreto, sondern auch im Training. Arnoux 5., Alboreto 6. Ferrari hat vorige Woche in Brands Hatch mit einer voll elektronischen Benzineinspritzung experimentiert. Dieses System wurde hier noch nicht eingebaut, kommt erst für den Grand Prix von England in Brands Hatch. Man hat hier auch im Training mit einer schmäleren Vorderspur experimentiert, 10 cm schmäler, um eine höhere Geschwindigkeit auf der Geraden zu erreichen. Man hat allerdings wieder zurückgebaut und fährt also mit der ganz normalen Ausrüstung. Piquet, Prost, Alboreto und Arnoux. Dann kommt an 5. Stelle De Angelis. Und 6. ist bereits Niki Lauda, der unmittelbar jetzt den französischen Renault überholt hat. Derek Voigt also jetzt zurückgefallen auf Platz 7 und Niki Lauda 6. bereits in den Weltmeisterschaftspunkterängen. Wir sind in der 5. Runde. Piquet hat im 4. Umlauf die schnellste Runde gedreht mit 1:30,755. Das ist noch 2,4 Sekunden über dem offiziellen Rundenrekord aufgestellt von Didier Pironi auf Ferrari hier vor 2 Jahren. Noch etwas Positives eigentlich, der erste kanadische Grand Prix, an den ich mich erinnern kann, der nicht nur pünktlich gestartet wurde, sondern der auch ohne Massenkollision, Abbruch nach dem Start und Neustart vor sich gegangen ist. Gerade hier im kanadischen Grand Prix hat es immer wieder Schwierigkeiten gegeben. Erinnern Sie sich nur vor 2 Jahren die Kollision am Start, Paletti, Pironi. So, Niki Lauda, hinter ihm De Angelis und Voigt, Lauda also 5. Leider hat die kanadische Regie das Überholmanöver nicht gezeigt. Niki Lauda bereits 5. hat De Angelis überholt. Hier haben Sie De Angelis, dahinter Voigt und dann den Brasilianer Senna mit dem Poleman. Das ist der Sensationsfahrer des Grand Prix von Monaco vor 2 Wochen.
In 5th position as we go back into the pack and pick up some of the action back here.
Actually, Niki Lauda seems to have gone around Elio during that particular break. Niki always a challenger and a good racer. Again, a better racer than he is qualifier. And Elio is being very closely followed by the Renault-powered and designed Renault, driven by Derek Warwick.
Now, Derek's teammate, Patrick Tambay, is not competing in the race here today. There is only one Renault car in the race. The reason for that is because Tambay broke a bone in his leg the last race in Monaco and was not cleared medically to compete here this afternoon at Canada.
The leg was actually broken by a piece of the suspension coming all the way through the monocoque and striking him just under the knee. He's in quite a bit of pain, tried to fit into the car and do a good job on Friday morning, but decided very wisely that it just wasn't possible at this Grand Prix. He's actually in the booth here talking to the Swiss television.
It's very interesting to listen to all the languages that this race is being done in. We're in a broadcast booth here shared by several broadcasters from various countries. The race is, of course, being either televised or broadcast to virtually every country in Europe and many in South America. Alongside us, the South American broadcasters. Nelson Piquet from Brazil, one of those South American drivers, is in the lead, with Alain Prost running in 2nd spot, and then the Ferrari cars in 3rd and 4th. And it looks like that Alboreto in 3rd position, beginning to put a challenge now, or at least drawing closer to Prost in second spot.
Michele has been gaining on Prost these last 3 laps, and you're going to see a real battle there for the second place. Neither one of these drivers like to be passed, but the maneuvers will be to the ultimate of everyone's talent to try and get by.
Talking with several of the drivers and finding out exactly where are the positions to pass on this track. Several of them expressed the opinion that it's not especially easy to pass on this track. They say that one of the areas to pass in is at the end of the straightaway leading to the hairpin, and if you can get an advantage there, or you can make a pass going into the hairpin turn number 16. There again is Derek Warwick as we go back up front and focus in on the driver who is running in third position at this point, Michele Alboreto.
Michele being the hand-picked driver by Enzo Ferrari to be the first Italian back in a red Ferrari car for many, many years. Enzo hoping to have an Italian world champion in his Ferrari cars, and a real battle going on here between Elio De Angelis and Derek Warwick.
6th and 7th position being contested there. Right now, Elio De Angelis in 6th position and Derek Warwick in the Renault running in 7th place.
Both cars are powered by the exact same power plant, so you can imagine how equally matched they are. Tires and driving style and chassis development are really the only differences.
This is the site of the Expo 67 back in 1967 here in Montreal, and you can see in the background occasionally some of the structures that were built for that still stand. Aside from the use of this facility for a race course, there are other things that it's used for. It's used for jogging and cycling and cross-country skiing in the wintertime. It's really a very beautiful area located across the water from the actual downtown area of Montreal. De Angelis and Warwick, 6th and 7th position here.
Tires are so fragile in Formula One. You see Derek made a challenge and possibly may have heated his tires to a point where he had to drop back and let them cool off for another lap or so. This challenge will probably resume after his tires are back to a perfect operating temperature.
Niki Lauda running in 5th position. Niki, of course, making a comeback, or made the comeback several years ago, actually, from the injury suffered in the accident several years ago, and has won 2 races so far this year. Here's the leader, Nelson Piquet, followed by Alain Prost, and the Ferraris driven by Alboreto and René Arnoux. About a 6 or 7 car length lead now for Nelson Piquet, who has had the lead since the drop of the green flag.
This is a good position for Nelson. He always says that he would rather lead than follow. Many drivers are more comfortable to try and catch someone than to lead a pack, but not Nelson Piquet. This is his favorite position, out front with everyone chasing him.
There are the standings. Piquet, Prost, Alboreto, Arnoux, Lauda, and De Angelis. The first 6 positions here as 8 tours, or laps, as we say in America, have been completed. One of the Ligier cars coming into the pits now.
Looks like Hainaut. First year in Formula One. Yes, it is. It says Andrea De Cesaris, but that is not Andrea.
It is indeed Francois Hainaut, the driver of car number 25. De Ligier. This is Francois' 6th race. Earlier this year, he has a 10th place finish in the South American Grand Prix. The others, he either did not finish or did not qualify. John, one of the things we've been noticing is these cars often bottom out as we have this challenge here for 6th and 7th position. These cars sometimes bottom out on this racetrack, and you can perhaps see the sparks coming from the underneath of the cars on occasion. Back with more live coverage of the Canadian Grand Prix in just a moment.
Auffällig folgt der Brasilianer Ayrton Senna. Liegt an 8. Stelle. De Angelis hat sich große Hoffnungen auf die Trainingsbestzeit gemacht. Ein Getriebeschaden hat diesen Erfolg aber verhindert. Niki Lauda holt auf, nur noch 13,9 Sekunden Rückstand. Es ist schon lange her, dass Nelson Piquet in einem Grand Prix geführt hat, zuletzt in Kyalami, nach Rosberg, und vor Lauda gewonnen hat damals Niki Lauda. Größter Erfolg für Piquet in diesem Jahr, die schnellste Runde in Imola und dreimal Trainingsbestzeit Kyalami, Imola und hier, wie gesagt, in Montreal. Und das ist der erste Ausfall, ein Ferrari. Entweder Alboreto oder Arnoux, auf alle Fälle profitiert Niki Lauda. Alboreto ist es, und damit ist Niki Lauda bereits Vierter. Michele Alboreto, ein unverdienter Ausfall, so wie es ausschaut. Ein Defekt am Motor. Michele Alboreto also ausgeschieden, der einzige Nicht-McLaren-Sieger in diesem Jahr. Niki Lauda ist damit bereits Vierter, hinter Piquet, Prost und Arnoux. Für Alboreto war es bis jetzt ein relativ unglückliches Wochenende. Er hat eine Meinungsverschiedenheit mit einem italienischen Journalisten gehabt, der ihm angekreidet hat, dass Alboreto in Monte Carlo wohnt, relativ steuergünstig für ihn. Und Alboreto hat ihn deshalb zur Rede gestellt. Die Antwort war, dass ihm der italienische Journalist einen Faustschlag ins Gesicht versetzt hat. Alboreto hatte eine geschwollene Lippe, aber er hat davon abgesehen, irgendwelche Klage einzureichen. Aber er war über diese Sache natürlich einigermaßen enttäuscht. Nach 10 Runden Piquet, Prost, Arnoux, Lauda, De Angelis, Warwick, Senna, De Cesaris, Menzel und Chiva die ersten 10. Dann folgen Rosberg, Winkelhock, Belov, Patrese, Fabi, Lafitte und Butzen. Niki Laudas Rückstand 12,7 Sekunden. Das heißt, Niki Lauda holt auf den führenden Nelson Piquet auf. Die ersten Überrundungen werden fällig. Hier immer noch das Duell zwischen De Angelis und Warwick. Als erst überrundet wurde der Franzose Philippe Alliot mit dem McDonald Ram Hart. Der Hart-Vierzylindermotor braucht relativ wenig Sprit. Achtung, und jetzt Warwicks Angriff auf De Angelis. Aus dem Windschatten heraus. Und gelungen, ja, das war eigentlich zu erwarten. De Angelis hat die Zielkurve nicht sehr gut erwischt. Der Lotus ist ein bisschen ins Rutschen gekommen und Derek Warwick hat die Situation sofort ausgenützt. Wir sehen das gleich noch einmal. Genau hier an der Startaufstellung aus dem Windschatten heraus. Ein kleiner Fehler nur von De Angelis und Derek Warwick hat ihn ausnützen können, ist also jetzt Fünfter und Elia De Angelis Sechster. Die beiden Lotusfahrer aus relativ guten Startpositionen also bereits zurückgefallen. Hier haben sie aus der Hubschrauberperspektive diesen sehr gewundenen Kurs von Montreal auf der Weltausstellungsinsel Notre Dame. Das ist der Osella von Piercarlo Ghinzani. In den Boxen. Den Osella hat übrigens der Österreicher Gardner neulich in Monza getestet. 30 Runden lang seine beste Zeit war 1,40,6. Ghinzanis Bestzeit war 1,39,5. Also nur eine Sekunde war der Österreicher langsamer. Rückstand von Niki Lauda nur noch 12,3 Sekunden. Lauda holt jetzt in jeder Runde etwa eine halbe Sekunde auf den führenden Nelson Piquet auf und natürlich auch auf seinen Teamkollegen Alain Prost. Von hinten droht im Augenblick keine Gefahr. Derek Warwick liegt 12 Sekunden hinter Niki Lauda. Lauda ist also dem Duo De Angelis Voigt pro Runde um 1,5 Sekunden bis 2 Sekunden davon gefahren und hat auf den führenden Piquet pro Runde eine halbe Sekunde aufgeholt. Ein neuer Fahrer in der Formel 1, der jetzt von Piquet überrundet wird, Mike Sackwell, im Wagen mit der Startnummer 10. Zurück zum Engländer Voigt, dem De Angelis folgt. Der Lotus, glaube ich, läuft nicht mehr optimal. De Angelis ist ein Fahrer, der üblicherweise im Zweikampf nicht nachgibt, hat sich gegen Voigt gewehrt, solange es einen Sinn gehabt hat. Voigt hatte zuletzt 2 Unfälle in Dijon und in Monte Carlo. In Monte Carlo die Kollision mit seinem Teamkollegen Patrick Tambay. Es war relativ beunruhigend, dass sich zuletzt bei 2 Rennen die Renault-Fahrer an den Füßen wehgetan hatten und das Boxenstopp von René Arnoux. Damit ist Niki Lauda bereits Dritter. Das ist sicherlich kein programmierter Boxenstopp bei René Arnoux. Montreal Piquet also 1 Sekunde vor Prost, 11 Sekunden vor Lauda und dann nicht mehr De Angelis, sondern Derek Voigt an der 4. Stelle. 17. Runde bereits in Montreal. Niki Lauda holt pro Runde eine halbe Sekunde bis eine Dreiviertelsekunde auf dem führenden Piquet auf und hinter Piquet liegt Alain Prost. Nach dem Boxenstopp von René Arnoux und dem Ausfall von Michele Alboreto, also die beiden McLaren ist an 2. und 3. Stelle, dann Voigt, De Angelis, Senna. Arnoux hat sich auf den 7. Platz wieder vorgeschoben, vor Rosberg, Menzel, De Cesaris, Chiva, Winkelhock, Belloff, Lafitte, Patrese, Butzen, Fabi und Cecotto. Piquet vor Prost. 12,4 nach dieser Runde der Rückstand von Lauda. Das heißt, Piquet hat das Tempo etwas verschärft, hat auf die Boxensignale, die ihm das Näherrücken von Niki Lauda signalisieren, also offenbar reagiert. Die Frage ist, wie lang der Brabham-BMW fahren wird. Sie wissen ja noch keine Zielankunft in diesem Jahr. Piquet, Prost, der sich im Augenblick mit einem Zweikampf, auf einen Zweikampf mit Piquet nicht einlässt. Dann kommt Lauda und dann kommt Voigt vor De Angelis. Ein kanadischer Grand Prix ohne kanadische Fahrer. Jacques Villeneuve, der Bruder von Gilles Villeneuve, hat im Gegensatz zu früheren Jahren diesmal gar keinen Versuch unternehmen können, sich für seinen Heimat-Grand Prix zu qualifizieren. Er hatte den Unfall in Indianapolis und ist zwar jetzt wiederhergestellt, muss aber ein Rennen der amerikanischen Kart-Serie fahren, aber ein Rennen natürlich, ein kanadischer Grand Prix mit dem Austro-Kanadier Walter Wolf, dem ehemaligen Rennstallbesitzer aus der Formel 1, zufällig gerade bei mir aufgetaucht. Herr Wolf, wie gefällt Ihnen das Rennen und wer gewinnt?
Ja, gewinnen wird sehr wahrscheinlich Lauda, so wie er ausschaut, wenn er so weiter fährt. Er fährt sehr vorsichtig, sehr sicher. Er hat früher, ich habe mit ihm gesprochen in Zeitland und hat gesagt, er hat Fehler gemacht in Monaco und wird nicht denselben Fehler zweimal machen. Und ich glaube, Niki ist ziemlich sicher, was er tut da. Und ich glaube, bevor es vorbei ist, der Niki.
Naja, hat in Monte Carlo auch gesagt, sein erster Fehler in diesem Jahr. Es war auch sein erster Dreher in diesem Jahr. Zum Vergleich, der Teamkollege Alain Prost hat sich ja schon mehrmals gedreht. In Imola, in Dijon, 3-mal in Zolder und hier im Training. Hat er immer das Glück gehabt, dass er auf der Straße geblieben ist und nirgendwo angeschlagen hat.
Ja, jeder kann machen einen Fehler. Fehler sind ja menschlich. Und ich glaube, Niki macht so wenig Fehler, dass wenn er einen macht,
ja,
das ist ein Saisonsfehler.
Und gerade unter diesen schwierigen Bedingungen, wie sie in Monte Carlo waren. 1,48 im Augenblick zwischen Piquet und Prost, Rückstand von Lauda 12,8 Sekunden. Schnellste Runde Piquet, ja, er hat auf den Angriff von Niki Lauda reagiert. 1,30, 1,85, Schnitt 176 Kilometer pro Stunde. Was alle österreichischen Formel 1-Fans wahrscheinlich wissen wollen, wird es ein Comeback von Walter Wolf in der Formel 1 geben.
Das wollten alle Kanadier wissen und alle Österreicher. Das ist immer eine Möglichkeit. Man sollte nie sagen, nie. Im Moment,
Wieder James Bond.
Im Moment geht es leider nicht. Das sind andere Verpflichtungen. Und ich bin erst zu Rennen gekommen, heute erst mal ein bisschen anschauen. weil mir langweilig ist, weil meine Freundin Elisabeth studiert und ich bin alleine hier, so schauen Rennen an.
Also in absehbarer Zeit kein neuer Wolf Formel 1?
Nicht in der nächstes Jahr, ganz bestimmt nicht. Und dann werden wir sehen, was passiert, ne? Wie sich die Sache ergibt, was passiert in Kanada an den nächsten Wahlen, und da sind ein Haufen Sachen.
Dankeschön, Walter Wolf. Im Bild sehen wir die Überrundung des Schweizers Marc Surer durch den führenden Nelson Piquet. Surer fährt nicht den Aeros BMW Turbo, sondern den Aeros Ford, und zwar nicht nur heute in Montreal, sondern auch am nächsten Sonntag in Detroit und dann auch noch in Dallas beim dritten Rennen der nordamerikanischen Grand Prix Serie, unmittelbar hintereinander innerhalb von 3 Wochen hier 3 Rennen auf nordamerikanischem Boden. Surer wäre ja in Monte Carlo eigentlich der Turbomotor zugestanden, aber er hat sich dort für den Saugmotor entschieden. Hier wäre auf alle Fälle wieder Thierry Boutsen, der Teamkollege, dran gewesen. Boutsen liegt mit dem Turbowagen an 16. Stelle. Surer also jetzt zwischen Piquet und Prost. Surer beim ersten Training der schnellste Ford Cosworth-Fahrer, der schnellste Saugmotorpilot, wurde aber gestern von beiden Tyrrell-Fahrern, von Belloff und Brando und auch von Johnny Cecotto überholt. Kommt mit diesem Kurs hier überhaupt nicht zurecht, rein abstimmungsmäßig, hat zwar genau die gleiche Abstimmung wie im vorigen Jahr getroffen, aber inzwischen sind die Reifen anders geworden, und das ist wahrscheinlich der Grund, warum Surer große Probleme hat, schlechte Straßenlage, über Untersteuern. Das haben Sie, glaube ich, aber vorhin selber sehen können. Die 20. Runde. Piquet 2,9 vor Prost und 13,6 vor Lauda. Im Bild Keke Rosberg mit dem Williams. Hat sich schon schön nach vorne gearbeitet auf Platz 7. Nach 19 Runden Piquet 2 Sekunden vor Prost, 13 vor Lauda, 37 vor Warwick, 41 vor De Angelis. Dann Arnoux, Rosberg, Senna, Menzel, De Cesaris, Chiva. Belloff hat seinen deutschen Landsmann Winkelhock überholt und ist jetzt 12. Winkelhock 13. Dann Lafitte, Boutsen, Patrese, Fabi und Cecotto. Im Bild hatten Sie Senna. Hier haben Sie noch einmal das Wunderkind der Formel 1. Ayrton Senna mit dem tollen Haar-Vierzylinder. Nach Emerson Fittipaldi und Nelson Piquet der dritte starke Brasilianer der Formel 1-Geschichte. Im Training zum ersten Mal hier unter den ersten 10 gewesen. Der brasilianische Verband hat übrigens wegen des Abbruchs von Monte Carlo fernschriftlich protestiert. Die FISA wird in einer Sitzung am 18. Juli, unmittelbar vor dem Grand Prix von England in Brands Hatch, über diesen Abbruch noch einmal diskutieren. Piquet hat in dieser Runde gegenüber Prost weitere 6 Zehntel seinen Vorsprung ausgebaut, führt also jetzt 2,6 vor Prost und 11,6 vor Lauda. Die Situation im Augenblick die: Prost fällt hinter Piquet zurück und Niki Lauda kommt ihm etwas näher. 21. Runde im Grand Prix von Kanada in Montreal. Piquet führt, Prost zweiter, Lauda dritter. Lauda 8,9 Sekunden hinter seinem Teamkollegen Alain Prost und 26 Sekunden vor seinem ersten Verfolger Derek Warwick mit dem Renault. Piquet, Prost. Die Bremsprobleme, die Alain Prost und auch Niki Lauda in Monte Carlo gehabt haben, sollten sich heute nicht wiederholen. Monte Carlo hat man die Belüftung für die Bremsen wie immer bei Regenrennen oder bei kalten Rennen zu stark abgedeckt. Die Folge war ein Überhitzen der Bremsen, vor allem links vorne. ist der Holländer Huub Rottengatter, Ersatzmann für Mauro Baldi, der an diesem Wochenende in Le Mans gefahren ist, im Team von Spirit. Grand Prix Premiere für den Holländer, erstmals nach Jan Lammers wieder ein Holländer in der Formel 1. Rottengatter hat sich problemlos qualifizieren können, weil durch den Startverzicht von Patrick Tambay niemand ausscheiden musste. 26 im Training, 26 Fahrer auch am Start. Rottengatter, 26 Formel 2 Rennen hat er bestritten, eines gewonnen, Zolder 1980 und in Enna war er einmal Zweiter. De Angelis angegriffen von René Arnoux, der nach seinem Boxenstopp, der 9,6 Sekunden gedauert hat, wieder auf Platz 6 vorgekommen ist. De Angelis Fünfter. Arnoux braucht üblicherweise eine halbe Saison, um richtig in Form zu kommen. Er fährt seine besten Rennen jedes Jahr ab dem Sommer. 49 Hundertstel, also eine halbe Sekunde zwischen De Angelis und Arnoux. Nach 22 Runden hat Prost gegenüber Piquet wieder etwas Boden gut gemacht, aber Niki Lauda ist beiden näher gekommen. Piquet 1,5 vor Prost und 10,7 vor Lauda. Wenn es so weitergeht, wird Niki Lauda bald zum ersten Mal in diesem Rennen weniger als 10 Sekunden hinter dem führenden Nelson Piquet sein. Achtung, Arnoux greift De Angelis an, bremst ihn aus in der Zielkurve und kommt vorbei. Links hat ein Fahrer sofort Platz gemacht. Noch einmal Zeitlupe, De Angelis schaut hinüber, sieht, dass er keine Chance gegen René Arnoux hat, der noch später gebremst hat. Und das ist jetzt der Boxenstopp des Holländers Huub Rottengatter. Seine Grand Prix Premiere hat bis jetzt immerhin 22 Runden gedauert. Rottengatter lässt Reifen wechseln. Hier haben Sie nochmals das Zwischenklassement. Eine Sekunde zwischen Piquet und Prost, Laudas Rückstand 10 Sekunden, Warwick 41, Arnoux und De Angelis je 44. Derek Warwick mit der Renault-Box über Funk verbunden. Renault hat einen neuen Ladeluftkühler, um Erhitzungsprobleme zu beseitigen. Man hat bis lange vor dem Start überlegt, ob man eingefrorenes Benzin verwenden soll oder nicht. Sie sahen Corrado Fabi und den Belgier Thierry Butzen im Aeros BMW Turbo. Corrado Fabi, Butzen, Cecotto, dahinter Riccardo Patrese, der in Montreal immer sehr stark gefahren ist. Vor 2 Jahren hier Zweiter hinter Nelson Piquet. Auch voriges Jahr sehr stark gewesen. Diesmal unauffällig. Ein Unfall im gestrigen Training, durchgebrochene Radaufhängung. Piquet muss sich jetzt durch diesen dichten Verkehr durchkämpfen. Piquet ist an Patrese vorbei, seinem jahrelangen Teamkollegen bei Brabham. Cecotto, Piquet. Cecotto ebenfalls jetzt überrundet. Nummer 2 im Team von Tolman. Das war wieder Corrado Fabi, der Bruder von Theo Fabi, der genau wie in Monte Carlo für Theo Fabi einspringt, weil sein Bruder Staatsverpflichtungen in Amerika hat. Piquet, Cecotto, Prost, Patrese und der Deutsche Stefan Bellof. Bellof fährt ein sehr gutes Rennen, 12. Platz, Teamkollege Winkelhock ist 13. Und Bellof mit großem Vorsprung, der bestplatzierte Saugmotorfahrer in diesem Rennen. Fährt zum ersten Mal in Montreal, im Training 2 Dreher, einmal auf Gras gewesen, Einmal Getriebeschaden, einmal Aufhängungsbruch, dann schlechter Motor, statt 10.800 nur noch 10.400 gedreht. Und trotzdem eine sehr, sehr gute Trainingsleistung. Heute im Aufwärmtraining 10. Platz. Und jetzt im Rennen bereits an 12. Stelle. Hat gegenüber der Startaufstellung also schon 10 Plätze gut gemacht. So, jetzt ist Piquet auch an Boutsen vorbei. Damit nur noch 15 Fahrer in der gleichen Runde in der 26. Runde. Und als nächster wird Piquets Teamkollege Fabi überholt. Im Hintergrund sah Sie ganz kurz Niki Lauda, 3. Platz, Rückstand 10,2, also gleich geblieben auf den führenden Piquet. So, Piquet ist an Fabi vorbei. Und jetzt hat Prost die schwere Aufgabe, am Teamkollegen von Piquet und auch am Belgier Thierry Boutsen vorbeizugehen. Piquet, Fabi, Boutsen, Prost, Cecotto, Patrese und im Hintergrund sahen Sie bereits Lauda mit einem Rückstand von 10 Sekunden. Jetzt sind es nur noch 9,6. So, und jetzt müssen wir dem Niki Lauda ein bisschen die Daumen halten, dass er beim Überrunden nicht aufgehalten wird, weil es ist doch eine dichte Gruppe, an der es vorbei muss. Prost hat Boutsen überholt, muss es noch an Fabi vorbei. Piquet hat freie Bahn nach vorne. Macht bis jetzt keinen Fehler. Vielleicht fällt Ihnen die neue Motorabdeckung des Brabham-BMW auf. Dazu gibt es auch eine neue Kühlung, ein zusätzlicher Ölkühler wurde in der Wagenschnauze montiert. Was war eigentlich das große Brabham-BMW-Problem in diesem Jahr? Es gab Qualitätsprobleme mit den Zulieferfirmen. Man hat nicht immer das Material richtig überprüfen können. Und dann hat sehr viel mit der Kühlung herumgebastelt am Saisonbeginn, sodass es nicht möglich war, den Wagen ausreichend zu testen. Niki Lauda nur noch 6 Sekunden hinter Piquet laut diesem Insert. In Wirklichkeit sind es leider noch 9,6 Sekunden. Niki Lauda von Fabi aufgehalten. Jetzt aber vorbei. Arnoux ist an Derek Voigt vorbei. Arnoux also 4. und Voigt 5. Die meisten Überholmanöver finden in der Zielkurve statt, in dieser Haarnadelkurve, die extrem rutschig ist, im ersten Gang mit etwa 70 Kilometer pro Stunde gefahren werden muss. René Arnoux nach seinem Boxenstopp also bereits wieder an 4. Stelle. Warwick 5. Rundenlanger Kampf mit De Angelis und jetzt rundenlanger Kampf mit René Arnoux. Die 28. Runde im Grand Prix von Kanada. Piquet, Prost, Lauda, Arnoux, Warwick, De Angelis, Rosberg, Senna, Menzel und Cheever die ersten 10, dann De Cesaris, Bellof, Lafitte und Winkelhock, diese 14 Fahrer in der gleichen Runde überrundet, Fabi, Boutsen, Cecotto und Patrese.
Position. We've been watching the Ferrari of René Arnoux move back up through the pack as he made a pit stop. Joining us in the broadcast booth is his teammate, Michele Alboreto, who unfortunately suffered some mechanical problems early in the race. Michele, what was the problem?
I think his fuel pump broken.
You were running in 3rd position at the time, and there, by the way, is your car on the left or the right side of the screen. You were running in 3rd position. Was the car working well for you up to that point?
My car was very good, and I wait the first part of the race for make an attack to Prost and Piquet. I am very unlucky this year, I think.
How are the track conditions? We heard the track temperature is something like 105 degrees, and your teammate came in to change tires because of some blistering. Is it hot out there?
For our car, I think this weather condition is very good because we need a hot temperature for our car. Unfortunately, René have make a pit stop because his tire is not very good, but for me, I have not the same problem at the beginning of the race.
Thank you for joining us, and we wish you a lot of good luck in coming Grand Prix.
Thank you.
Michele Alboreto, one of the drivers who went out of the race early here at the Canadian Grand Prix. There are other races going on here this afternoon throughout the United States. We've told you about the kart race from Portland later. There was a NASCAR race going on at Michigan International Speedway, the 2-mile high-banked tri-oval, and at this point, Benny Parsons, who has joined us in the broadcast booth for a couple of times on our NASCAR races. He is leading that 400-mile, 200-lap encounter at Michigan International Speedway. But here in Canada, at Montreal, the Isle of Notre Dame, the Gilles Villeneuve circuit, it is Nelson Piquet leading with Alain Prost still running in second spot.
You can see on the front of that car, this is a new nose cone that was fitted for this particular event, and the standings there in front of you, Nelson Piquet, Alain Prost, Niki Lauda holding down third for quite some time now, but he will be challenged by René Arnoux. That new nose cone that you see on the Brabham, that is an oil cooler. This was actually designed not for Canada or Detroit, but the upcoming Dallas race, and of course they like to try and test things before it goes into use the first time. So you may see that same nose in Detroit, or they may switch back to the other one. But what that hole is there is sucking in air, trying to cool the oil of these turbocharged engines, which get very hot. A little extra cooling for Dallas planned.
Well, these Formula One drivers will be in the United States for the next two races. And the next event will be in Detroit, Michigan, the Detroit Grand Prix. And then, as you indicated, the next stop is in Dallas, Texas, the first time that the Formula One cars will have competed in that southern city.
And that will be warm.
I'm sure will be, and it's always hot and also humid down in that area of the country also.
Formula One boys do race in hot countries, but they're not used to so much humidity as they'll find in Texas, that's for sure.
31 laps completed. Piquet is first, and we're watching Niki Lauda in the number 8 McLaren. And right ahead of him is the number 14 car, driven by Manfred Winkelhock. Manfred has qualified well in most of the races prior to this one. Today, he qualified in 12th starting position, but Manfred has not been successful as far as completing races is concerned. There is Alain Prost, second place car, who has just put a lap on Winkelhock. But Manfred has not finished a race this year, as a matter of fact, but he has started as far up as 6th in Grand Prix competition.
Qualifying, but very well, always. Doing much better this year than ever before, but being plagued with minor mechanical problems.
We have a new fast lap turned in the race, and by the way, track records are recorded only during race competition. There is no such thing as a qualifying one-lap record, but the new fastest lap during today's race was just 2 laps ago. That was turned by Niki Lauda at 110.009 miles an hour. Now, in terms of speed, what would these cars achieve as far as a trap speed is concerned, or the fastest before backing off for a turn?
Well, that is determined by how long of a straightaway you're on, of course. At Indianapolis, you can see speeds well in excess of 200 miles an hour. Niki Lauda going by Winkelhock there again. Winkelhock actually must have passed him back somewhere. But Formula One cars are capable of about 190, 195 at some of the longer straightaways on the Formula One circuit. I think South Africa is the fastest, where they touch about 208 miles an hour, which is extremely fast for these 1,200-pound cars.
Niki Lauda in the McLaren, car number 8, being shown now in 3rd position. Ahead of Niki is Alain Prost and Nelson Piquet.
The the tag that you see on the side of Niki Lauda's car there in good view, that's the engine builder. It stands for Technique Avant-Garde. And a slowing car, it looks like a Skull Bandit slowing down on the inside. Tag is the engine builder, engine designed by Porsche. The Tag taking over the maintenance and doing some excellent sponsorship also with the Williams team.
The McLarens are running second and third here at the Canadian Grand Prix at this point, with Prost in second and Niki Lauda in third. Vinny Arnoux, who has made a pit stop, is in fourth spot, and Derek Warwick is in fifth.
Jacques Lafitte slowing down there. Very serious problem, looks like, with some oil coming out of the back of his car.
Jacques Lafitte, the French driver, driving for Williams this year, one of the most experienced race drivers. He has competed on the Formula One circuit for several years. This is his 43rd race, as a matter of fact. He is 40 years old, but some mechanical problems have popped up for Jacques Lafitte here in Montreal. We'll be right back with more of the Canadian Grand Prix.
13. Die weiße Flagge bedeutet entweder ein Einsatzfahrzeug auf der Piste oder ein langsam rollender Wagen. Ich wollte vorhin sagen, die Porsche-Ingenieure haben ab dem französischen Grand Prix in Dijon, den Niki Lauda gewonnen hat, die Verdichtung etwas zurückgenommen. Boxenstopp von Mike Steckwell. Das ist der junge Neuseeländer, der in der Formel 2 Europameisterschaft nach 5 Siegen in 6 Rennen mit seinem Ralf Honda überlegen in Führung liegt und vorigen Sonntag erst in Po, das ist das Monte Carlo, der Formel 2 gewonnen hat. Voriges Jahr gab es dort einen Sieg des Österreichers Jo Gardner. Und zum zweiten Mal in der Box Rottengatter. Das ist Mike Steckwell, fährt mit einem Ferrari-Aufkleber auf dem Sturzhelm. Viele glauben, der Kampf um den zweiten Ferrari-Platz für nächstes Jahr wäre bereits eröffnet. So, jetzt ist Jacques Lafitte in den Boxen ausgestiegen. Damit Lafitte auch in diesem Rennen ohne Punkte, zuletzt ein 8. und ein 9. Platz in Dijon und in Monte Carlo, aber noch nie heuer unter den ersten 6. Das Hauptproblem des Williams Honda ist das Untersteuern und es gibt auch Mike Steckwell auf.
Right here on ESPN. There is Jacques Lafitte, who we had, oh, pardon me, that is K.K. Rosberg, who has problems. There is Derek Warwick.
Jack, what happened? I think the turbo was out. One of the 2 turbo is out. Very sorry, Jack. This is his fault when you've done so well, of course, isn't it? No, I know my car was not too bad for racing. But you know, we have a very bad testing qualification, and it's always difficult to start on 17th position. And also, I missed my start with my engine, blah, 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 blah. And I was 21, 22 at the start. It's a bad position on the grid. Anyway. Better luck next time, Jack. Thank you.
So the Williams cars have run into a problem here at the same time as Lafitte is out of the race, and K.K. Rosberg was going very slowly on the racetrack. The race is exactly half over now. Half of the laps have been completed, and Nelson Piquet in car number 1, there he is, continues to run in the lead. He has held the lead all race long to this point, and Alain Prost has run second all race long. Well, we should be seeing some pit stops occurring here before too long, John. Barry Gill once again.
Drama here in the Williams pit. No sooner we stopped talking to Jacques Lafitte, who's come in because of a turbo problem, and world champion Keke Rosberg, the former world champion, lying 7, has come in as well. We will certainly try and get a word with him and come back to you in the booth.
That is the situation that we just talked about. The Williams drivers experiencing problems at just about the same time. Both of those cars into the pits. We'll stand by for a report from Barry Gill and perhaps a word from K.K. Rosberg.
I was asking the team managers about tire changes, and again, this is something they want to keep very secret. They said I'd go off and tell the whole United States exactly what their race plan is, and they didn't want that to happen. Now, here we have a scheduled tire stop. That's the Ligier car driven by Andrea De Cesaris. You have a clock on him, 6 seconds. They seem to be moving a little slowly.
certainly not as quickly as we see in IndyCar racing as far as a tire change is concerned.
Well, this is very slow even for Formula One standards, and maybe no, he's going out again.
Almost 21 seconds there on the stop by Andrea de Cesaris. As we go back up front and check on the progress of the leader, Nelson Piquet, and we wonder at this point if he will be making a pit stop. Now we can see that Alain Prost has gotten by all of the cars that are separating himself from the leader, and perhaps it's the time that Alain Prost is thinking about making a challenge for the lead here with the race just a little bit more than half over. Eric Prost in second, and to the inside, trying to pass one of the back markers, the third place car driven by Niki Lauda. Rene Arnoux once again in car number 28 is in fourth position at this point, having already made a pit stop.
Beautiful red cars of Ferrari, so distinctive. The Jeep on the car again. That's the Italian Petroleum Company.
Let's go to Barry Gill.
Well, I'm in a very unhappy pit indeed, as I said, first second of feet, and then the former world champion, Jackie Rosberg. Jackie, what happened?
The engine just cut off. I think electric is just quite returned without any warning stops.
Really hasn't been the Williams weekend, has it?
No, I think the race was going reasonably, but then this happened. I think we would have been looking quite good at the end of the race.
You certainly look as if you're going to get some points, Keke. You must be very disappointed.
You always are when you don't finish a race, because only the finishers get rewarded.
Here's to the next time, Keke. Thanks for talking to us.
Being a
K.K. Rosberg, the Finnish driver, the 1982 world champion, last year was fifth in points. His two career wins have come at Sweden in 1982 and Monaco in 83. He will not win the Canadian Grand Prix in 1984. He and his teammate Jacques Lafitte are both out with mechanical problems.
Piquet actually owes a great deal of his success to an American entrant, Fred Opert, who was sponsored by Valvoline Oil for many years in Formula 2. And then on to Can-Am racing. He's a hard driver, someone locking up the brakes there. It's one of the Lotuses. Sorry, it's the Cosworth car of Martin Brundle, trying very hard again to get through on the inside.
As we were watching practice last Friday and yesterday, we noticed that the driving technique on the non-turbocharged cars is quite different from those that are turbocharged.
That's for sure. There's about 150 horsepower difference between the two types of motors. And with a turbo, you virtually have to get it in a straight line before you can actually put down the accelerator. And here we have the standards with Nelson Piquet doing an excellent job.
Prost running in second. Niki Lauda is third. Rene Arnoux is fourth. Derek Warwick is fifth. And Elio De Angelis is running in sixth spot. 36 laps completed in Montreal, Quebec.
Chiva ist Neunter, also nur noch 8 Fahrer in der gleichen Runde. Piquet, Prost, Lauda, Arnoux, Warwick, De Angelis, Menzel und Senna. Jetzt droht allerdings auch Senna gleich die Überrundung. Senna, Piquet, dann Chiva und dann Alain Prost. In Montreal gab es noch keinen kanadischen Grand Prix ohne Kollisionen. Prost jetzt auch auf der Geraden an Eddie Cheever vorbei. Die Alpha fahren, wie gesagt, mit sehr wenig Ladedruck. Die Beschleunigung ist die große Schwäche dieser Wagen. Prost, Cheever und Lauda schon dahinter. Niki Lauda nur noch 3,6 hinter Alain Prost. Und zwischen den beiden McLaren-Fahrern liegt Eddie Cheever. Mit Sicherheit hat Alain Prost im Rückspiegel bereits gesehen, dass Niki Lauda hinter ihm ist. Vielleicht erleben wir heute zum ersten Mal in dieser Grand Prix-Saison einen direkten Zweikampf Rad an Rad oder Helm an Helm zwischen den beiden McLaren-Fahrern Alain Prost und Niki Lauda. Ich glaube, sehr viele Formel-1-Fans freuen sich schon das halbe Jahr auf einen derartigen Zweikampf. Im Training war Alain Prost immer der Schnellere. 7:0 steht für den Franzosen, wenn man alle 7 Grand Prix-Trainings dieser Saison herannimmt. Lauda glaubt allerdings, dass im Qualifikationstraining manchmal irgendetwas falsch macht, weil er mit den Qualifikationsreifen nie richtig Grip, nie richtig Bodenhaftung hat. Entweder er wärmt die Reifen nicht genug auf, glaubt er, oder er fährt eine zu schnelle erste Runde mit diesen Qualifikationsreifen, die ja nur 2, 3 wirklich schnelle Runden erlauben. Prost hat manchmal auch das Glück, richtige Lücken im Verkehr zu finden. Niki Lauda hat gelegentlich das Pech gehabt, dass unmittelbar vor ihm ein Motor explodiert ist, die Piste dadurch Öl überschwemmt, entsprechend rutschig und langsam war. Das ist hier passiert nach einem Motorschaden von Andrea De Cesaris und noch einmal gestern nach einem Motorschaden von Philippe Alliot. ...38. Runde, Piquet 1,3 vor Prost.
Keke Rosberg and also Jacques Lafitte. All have retired from competition here in the first half of this race. The first 7 cars are running on the lead lap. A lap down in 8th spot is Ayrton Senna. 9th is Eddie Cheever. 10th is Stefan Beloff. 11th is Manfred Winkelhock. 12th is Corrado Fabi. 13th is Martin Brundle. 14th is Ricardo Patrese. And 15th is Johnny Ceccato.
Here you see the 2 beautiful John Player special cars going around nose to tail. Good friends, these 2 drivers, but still very competitive individuals with Elio De Angelis and Nigel Mansell. Nigel lives on the Isle of Man, and Elio lives on the island of Sardinia.
These teammates are battling for position here. 6th spot to De Angelis and 7th to Mansell. And the number 22 car, driven by Ricardo Patrese, one of the Benetton cars, Alfa Romeo, has stalled on the race course. As a matter of fact, he has had some serious contact with the Armco barrier, it would appear. The suspension on the front of that car is pretty well broken completely.
The car looked exactly like that yesterday after practice, also in qualifying. Nigel going there a little wide coming out of that corner. This is when a team manager might become a little bit nervous, having both cars in such a close variation of each other, and the oil flag, the yellow and orange oil flag being shown in that particular spot. And that might have been the reason for Ricardo Patrese going off the circuit.
Well, the flag system used in the European and Grand Prix races is a little bit different than used in the United States, as Corrado Fabi has come in for his pit stop and is going back out there. The white flag, which is normally used to indicate 1 more lap to go in American racing, indicates that there is an emergency vehicle on the track. There is no indication given to the drivers when there is 1 more lap to go. And Terry Boutsen also off the course.
The Barkley arrows there, a little bit of problem. Everyone looking at the back of the car. The BMW powered engine giving off a little bit of smoke.
Go back and look at these Lotuses, sponsored by John Player. Another sponsorship that we should elaborate on. Those are, of course, a brand of cigarettes made in Europe. And the Benetton car that we saw just a few minutes ago, that is an Italian knitwear company. Benetton is sponsor of the Alfa Romeo cars, driven by Ricardo Patrese and Eddie Cheever. From high overhead, the Isle de Notre Dame. And there is the battle there for 5th and 6th position into the hairpin. It is De Angelis and Mansell going for position.
Fantastic battle going on here, and as I get on the outside, Nigel trying to come through, but Elio says, no way, buddy, we're friends, but we're competitors all the way down to the end. Now Nigel is certainly going to try something on the inside, possibly. He knows that's not the place.
Well, that brings up an interesting subject that we should perhaps talk about, John. Is there a number 1 driver in a team like this?
Actually, no. Both drivers are considered what they call equal number 1s. They get the same amount of equipment, the same kind of tires, and the same amount of money is spent on both cars. Now, here comes a situation where the leader is going to get caught up in this tremendous battle between the teammates on the John Player special cars.
Well, we'll watch Nelson Piquet's strategy in trying to put a lap on the 5th and 6th.
Spreading the gloom and doom, especially for Nelson Piquet fans. But I have to tell you, the reason Corrado Fabi came into the pit was because he was having a boot pressure problem. Let's hope that Nelson Piquet has had such an awful doesn't have the same problem, but that he not only finishes his first race, but he finishes his second. I'm not biased, but I just think Nelson deserves the win.
The report report from Barry Gill in the pit area. As out on the racetrack, the action is beginning to heat up. Nelson Piquet, the leader of the race, is approaching some slower cars, and those slower cars, if you would like to label them as such, driven by Elio De Angelis and Nigel Mansell, 5th and 6th positions.
On some of these long shots, you see the two McLaren cars coming up behind Nelson Piquet. Now, if Nelson is held up by the Lotuses, that's going to give a chance for these two to catch up. If they don't start playing games with each other, they should be able to gain some ground on the leader.
Piquet moving through the S's. There are the Lotuses, the John Player sponsored cars. And there is Nelson Piquet right behind them. These are 6th and 7th position instead of 5th and 6th, as I indicated a few seconds ago. In 5th spot is Derek Warwick. 6th is De Angelis. 7th is Mansell. And as you indicated, John, the McLarens, there they are, just popping into the screen at the top. Pursuing still Nelson Piquet, but at this point showing no desire to challenge for the lead. The question is, are they able to, or are they simply holding back and waiting for the laps to tick off and conserving the fuel perhaps and making a run at it in the late stages of the contest? There are the McLarens, Prost and Lauda. 2nd and 3rd position right there as another car moves into the pit area. That is the number 26, driven by André de Cesaris. We'll be right back from Montreal.
Training eine Motorschaden. Wir sind wieder zurück beim Zweikampf der McLaren und jetzt beim Versuch von Piquet, die beiden Lotus auszutricksen. Mittlerweile Mansell an De Angelis vorbei. Mansell also jetzt 6. und De Angelis 7. Piquet, Mansell, De Angelis, Prost und Lauda. Und mittendrin im Gewitter des Spitzenkampfes ist es der Holländer Huub Rottengater mit seinem schon mehrmals überrundeten Spirit Heart. Die Wagen von Mauro Baldi. Die kehren beiden Lotus vorbei. Die beiden McLaren jetzt an Rottengater vorbei. Ohne Probleme. Der Holländer hat sofort Platz gemacht im Gegensatz zum Training, als der Keke Rosberg ausgerechnet in dessen schnellster Qualifikationsrunde ein bisschen aufgehalten hat, weil er nicht sofort Platz machte. Lauda ist vorne. Niki Lauda ist Zweiter. Zweiter Platz für Niki Lauda in der 44. Runde. Schade, dass wir das jetzt nicht live gesehen haben. Und dieses Überholmanöver hat leider die kanadische Bildregie verpasst. Der erste direkte Zweikampf Prost gegen Lauda in diesem Jahr und Niki Lauda hat ihn im Augenblick gewonnen. Aber die große Frage ist natürlich jetzt noch, werden die Reifen halten? Lauda glaubt, dass man heute...
The upcoming events. We'll have reports this coming Thursday night on the kart race at Portland that you'll see live later on ESPN. Plus, we'll have a report from Le Mans, the 24 hours which was held yesterday and earlier today. Plus, of course, a recap of this race, Speed Week, Thursdays at 7:30 on ESPN. While we were away, Nelson Piquet, there he is, still has the lead. He was able to get by both of the Lotus cars. However, Niki Lauda is now in 2nd position as Lauda has passed his teammate Alain Prost. So Lauda is 2nd, Prost 3rd, followed by Arnoux, Warwick, and Mansell.
On the inside there, someone very much in trouble. Is it Elio?
That's one of the
It is
Lotuses.
Elio.
Almost takes one of the McLarens with him.
Taking a shortcut across the grass. Where's the other Lotus? The other Lotus seems to be missing entirely. It looks like Nigel and Elio.
I think the other Lotus is running considerably ahead of this pack here.
Correct. Elio must have had a big problem there somewhere.
We'll take a look at it again. There is the first Lotus moving through the corner, and here is the one that got off the course.
Almost collecting Lauda there.
Lauda had to go to the outside and get the left side of the car off the track onto the grass, but no major damage done. So Lauda now 2nd. There is Prost running in 3rd spot as we take a look at it one more time.
Possibly a braking problem here on Elio's car. You can see that they've separated quite a bit between Nigel and Elio. I think Nigel will probably be able to continue, but Elio will certainly be coming in the pits to have a check. See see the car going over the curb. These cars cannot really withstand this type of battering here. Almost great car control here by Nicky, just touching the dirt but collecting it beautifully. If that little bit of asphalt wouldn't have been there, that could have been a spin right in front of Elio.
A close call for the driver running in second position, Nicky Lauda, but he was able to survive and now is pursuing the leader of the race, Nelson Piquet. There's the interval between second and third spot. Alain Prost, who had been running in second, is now back to third and running about 8 or 10 car lengths behind his teammate Nicky Lauda. Lauda with a little bit of distance to close up, though, if he's going to make a challenge on Nelson Piquet, who has looked strong so far in this Canadian Grand Prix. There's Nicky Lauda. Well, you got to wonder, John, if indeed these drivers are going to make pit stops, because we're well into this race. 46 laps out of 70 completed.
Again, talking to the team managers, they weren't really willing to give that kind of information, but I would have to say that if they don't make the pit stops in the next 5 laps, they're going to try and go the distance without doing so.
A good shot of the rear wing on these Formula One cars as Nelson Piquet went around the hairpin, though. These rear wings are considerably different than the ones used on the Indy cars in the United States.
Of course, the Indianapolis cars, the rear wing is restricted in its size to try and give a little bit of sensibility to their cornering capabilities, where in Formula One, the #1 problem is getting the power to the ground of these fantastically powerful turbocharged engines. So the rear wings have grown in size with the development of the engines. It was Ferrari who first came out with this particular wing, and everyone said it was a little bit ridiculous. But very soon, when it proved its competitiveness, everyone had a copy.
And of course, these Formula One cars are flat bottomed. The aerodynamics used on the Indianapolis type cars, the wind tunnels to give them tremendous downforce, is not permitted in Formula One.
For 2 years now, they've gone to flat bottoms. They were actually the originators of the wind tunnel effect downforce bottoms of the car. For the last 2 seasons, that has been outlawed to try and reduce cornering speeds, lap times. A puff of smoke there.
Yes.
We'll have to take another look at that.
Looked like the Piquet may have let go with a puff of smoke there. We'll continue to watch that situation. While there is Ayrton Senna, who is now running in 9th position. Senna has not been all that strong. There is Piquet in #1. And I guess if he had a problem, he would have chose to go into the pits. He did not, so perhaps it was just one of those things, and he's running all right again.
What the drivers call a cough.
Alain Prost is the leader in the Formula One standings at this point. This is the 7th race of the season. Prost has 28.5 points. Nicky Lauda second in the point standings with 18. Rene Arnoux is third with 14.5. Warwick is fourth with 13. Elio De Angelis is fifth in the point standings with 12.5. The reason for the half points is because not full points were awarded for the Monaco Grand Prix, which, as we indicated earlier, was cut short because of rain. Here's Barry.
We go right through this race without a tyre change. The tyres we've looked at on the cars that have come in indicate a lot more people are going to have to make pit stop visits. Poor old De Chesris has just come in with completely blistered tyres, but he's also got completely failing brakes. Jackie, you pointed out earlier today that brakes will be a major problem at Montreal. Well, it started.
So the situation is we have 48 laps completed. Piquet, Lauda, Prost, Arnoux, and Warwick, the top 5, will be right back in Montreal.
Ich glaube, diese Rauchfahne war nicht sehr beunruhigend. Das war nur durch Anbremsen und durchs Gas wegnehmen bedingt. Allzu optimal liegt der Brabham allerdings nicht auf der Straße. Möglicherweise hat Piquet schon ein bisschen zu viel Reifengummi verschlissen. 21 ist der Holländer Rotengatter. Und Lauda fährt Prost davon. 7 Sekunden liegt Lauda hinter Piquet, aber 4 Sekunden vor Alain Prost. Das letzte Drittel des kanadischen Grand Prix gelten natürlich zwei große Fragen. Erstens, reicht das Benzin? Und zweitens, halten die Reifen? Lauda und Prost, wie gesagt, mit 2 Zehntel Bar weniger Ladedruck, 2,0 Bar, um Sprit zu sparen. Lauda möchte unbedingt versuchen, ohne Reifenwechsel durchzukommen. Wie schaut es bei der Konkurrenz aus? Nelson Piquet benutzt ja die gleichen Reifen wie Niki Lauda, und was seinen Treibstoffverbrauch betrifft, so hat Piquet einen Computer im Cockpit, von dem er jede Runde ablösen kann, für wie viele Runden der Treibstoff bei gleichbleibendem Ladedruck und bei gleichbleibender Geschwindigkeit noch reichen wird. Er kann das dann vergleichen mit der Anzeige von den Boxen. Sollte er zum Beispiel ablesen, der Sprit reicht nur noch für 20 Runden, aber der Grand Prix dauert noch 22 Runden, dann müsste Piquet auf alle Fälle Ladedruck wegnehmen, wieder zurückdrehen. Winkel hoch überrundet von Derek Voigt. Ja, und Derek Voigt, der Renault-Fahrer, ist natürlich über Funk mit seiner Box verbunden. Interessant war noch ein letzter Dialog von Niki Lauda mit den...
For the running of the Canadian Grand Prix, and at the conclusion of 43 laps, the leader is Nelson Piquet. Out of the race at this point, Francois Hainaut, Alboreto, Lafitte, Rosberg, Patrese, Boutsen, and De Cesaris. Here is Derek Warwick in the only Renault car in the race. His teammate out with a broken leg.
Hopefully Patrick Tambay will be in good shape by the Dallas race. He's not going to try and run Detroit, and the question here is, what will Renault do about that? Will they run a second car with a new driver for Detroit? That's an important market for them, and they would like to have 2 cars running for sure.
The next race on the Formula One schedule is in Detroit, Michigan, and some of the Brabham mechanics, I understand, John, have some greetings to pass along.
Well, there's a little bit of humor here in even the most serious Grand Prix situations. I have an urgent message here to all the lovely ladies in Detroit, Michigan, from all the lovely Brabham mechanics. If any one of you would like to meet a real live Formula One mechanic, please stop by the garage area starting Tuesday. There's a PS says, same thing for you Texas ladies. I think that'd be a good experience for everyone who can make it into the garage areas to say hello to the world champion here, as they refer to themselves, Brabham Mechanics. In the pits, we have Stefan Beloff in the Tyrrell, normally aspirated engine. Again, the mechanics not in too much of a hurry.
Beloff running in 10th position.
Pulling something, had no idea what that was.
It looked like they were putting fuel in the car, but I'm sure they weren't, or at least they better not have.
Almost looked like something might have come adrift inside the cockpit, like a water bottle or something like that. Certainly some fluid moving around.
There's the leader, Nelson Piquet, who would like to wish all fathers around the United States and Canada happy Father's Day.
For sure.
I'm sure my father watching from Indiana this afternoon. Here's Barry Gill.
Just to mention for Ken that his father's done it again. That pit stop took 7.96 seconds. The tyres and, of course, the mystery ballast, which I believe is East Horsley water all the way from Surrey.
All right, Barry Gill with that report from the pit area. And here's some action on the course as
Derek Warwick.
And I believe Lauda.
No, Rene Arnoux.
It is Arnoux.
Ferrari. Color schemes of these cars can become a bit confusing. Very bright colors being used by most of the teams.
There is Arnoux in car number 28, the Ferrari. He is being shown now in 5th position. Warwick has passed him. There is Derek. And behind him,
commentators do not have the advantage of large numbers on these cars anymore. Going on the inside there, Manfred Winkelhock having a look. You really have to rely on the drivers' helmets to be able to identify who is who. Manfred really having a try there.
Manfred is shown in 11th position, a lap down, so he is not on the same lap.
But Manfred doesn't care what lap he's on. He's there to race. But it looks like Arnoux is actually slowing,
yes,
for sure.
As now 2 other cars have been able to pass René Arnoux, so Arnoux is in trouble. There's the leader, Piquet.
Arnoux slowing.
The leader, Nelson Piquet, who has led all the way in this race, and we have now completed 53 laps. We only have 17 laps remaining. There's Derek Warwick running in 4th spot right now. And Winkelhock is right ahead of our leader.
On that long shot down that straightaway, you can see now that the Parmalat Brabham is not bottoming out at all. There's no sparks coming out. And this shows you the different characteristics of handling that the driver has to adjust to throughout in a race event.
Right behind Nelson Piquet is the other Tyrrell car. Now Nelson still trying to put another lap on Manfred Winkelhock from West Germany. Perhaps he can do it here on this short straightaway. He moves to the inside, and Winkelhock does give way, and Piquet puts another lap on him. He's now 2 laps down.
This is the type of driving style we saw out of Piquet all last year. Never making a mistake, very smooth, calculating, and in the lead. Someone stopping there. Again, I think it's the Skull Bandit.
Right at the hairpin. We'll see if he is able to get off the track. Meanwhile, Piquet has passed that portion of the racetrack and is moving back up to speed. That, of course, is the slowest part of the racetrack, that hairpin, turn number 16 and also turn number 8. There are the standings. Piquet, Lauda, Prost, Warwick, Arnoux, and Mansell. We're at the Labatt's Grand Prix of Canada. We're glad you could join us today, and we'll be back with more action.
Brandl, Cecotto, Sura und Alliot. Der Holländer Rottengatter im Augenblick noch als 16. in der Wertung, aber bereits mit 10 Runden Rückstand. Alle anderen ausgeschieden, zuletzt De Cesaris und Fabi. Hier haben Sie Alain Prost. ...19 Sekunden hinter Piquet und 13 Sekunden hinter Lauda. Naja, die Reifen schauen ehrlich gesagt nicht mehr ganz optimal aus. Rottengatter ein 11. Mal überrundet. Hat keine Chancen mehr in die Wertung zu kommen, weil man ja 90% der Distanz des Siegers zurücklegen muss. Und das sind bei 70 Runden 7 Runden Rückstand. Mehr dürfte sich Rottengatter also nicht leisten. Alain Prost, wie gesagt, wie immer der heutige Grand Prix ausgeht, er bleibt Führender in der Weltmeisterschaft. Seine Eltern sind hier in Montreal von den kanadischen Grand Prix-Veranstaltern eingeladen worden. Was ein bisschen schwierig war, die Eltern von Prost haben keine Pässe, haben Frankreich noch nie verlassen, wurden aber über den Umweg, über die kanadische Botschaft in Paris hierher gebracht. Alain Prost Vater ist Tischler in Saint-Chamond an der Loire. Niki Lauda hinter dem deutschen Winkelhock. Probiert's rechts, probiert's jetzt links. Na Gott sei Dank, das war schon höchste Zeit. 4 Sekunden liegt Lauda hinter Piquet, aber 17 Sekunden vor Prost. Für die letzten 16 Runden, die Ausgangsposition also, Lauda 4,9 Sekunden hinter Piquet. Ja, müsste schon.
We're watching the leader, Nelson Piquet, the Parmalat Brabham. Second place, about 5 seconds behind, is Niki Lauda. Then about 16 seconds behind the leader is third place, Alain Prost. Fourth place is Derek Warwick. 5th is Rene Arnoux, who is now a lap down. There are only 4 cars on the lead lap at this point. There is Piquet, looking very strong here with less than 20 laps to go in this event. And there is Stefan Belov, who has pulled off the course in one of the Tyrrells, the normally aspirated engine. He is climbing out of that car and calling it quits for the day.
He's climbing out right in front of his pit crew, actually. In front of, he's not in the pit row. He's on the outside of the guardrail protecting the pit row. Mark Schurer still running, the Renault there being overtaken by Nelson Piquet. Mark Schurer is still running with the Cosworth.
And John, it would appear at this point that the Brabham is looking very strong. As a matter of fact, has a 4-second lead on one of the McLarens and a 16-second lead on the other one, and that's a lot of distance to make up on this racetrack.
It's a lot of time in Formula One. Of course, that can be eaten up by one problem, one gear going off, or having to make a tire pit stop would totally eat up all the way down to the 20-second mark. But at this point, Nelson Piquet looks extremely strong for his first well-deserved victory of the year.
Well, now the leader has been able to pass Derek Warwick, and so there are only 3 cars on the lead lap, the Brabham of Nelson Piquet and the 2 McLarens.
Again, showing a very strong McLaren domination so far this year with that TAG turbo engine designed by Porsche. Coming down the straightaway again in the pits now, Derek Warwick. You can see that he did need to get some tires, that's for sure. The blister marks.
Barry.
4 seconds gone, 5 seconds gone, 6 seconds. Derek Warwick hoped to go through the race. Renault hoped he might be able to. We're standing back to let him out quickly. Warwick really does want to resolve after all the problems. And as you can see, one of the front cars is stuck into the problem. That took, according to my watch, 20 seconds. So Derek Warwick, a real problem there. That isn't the sort of pit stop he wanted.
So a good stop for Derek Warwick, our 4th place driver at this point. Good quick pit stop at about 20 seconds. There's Nicky Lauda running in 2nd spot.
The back end of Nicky's car is getting a little bit loose, as you can see there. Front end still gripping quite well, but the back end beginning to show a little bit, and you can see that black line on his rear tires. Those are blister marks. He's going to have to make a decision. Do I try and hold on with the tires that I have, or do I go ahead and spend some time in the pits?
Well, about 13 laps to go here. 57 laps have been completed. So Lauda may be considering a pit stop here, but Nelson Piquet shows no signs of anything going wrong with that car. He rounds the hairpin and heads down the front stretch here in front of us.
Yeah. There's a little bit of wear there on the front tire. You can see the black line of the left front tire. There's the rear tires that take most of the beating. And he does certainly have a lead now on the McLaren. McLaren must be slowing with those blistered tires on the rear.
Well, the battle among tire companies is a very heated one in Formula One racing, and Nelson Piquet runs on Michelin's, whereas the McLarens of Prost and Lauda are also on Michelin's. The other 2 tire companies that supply tires to Formula One racing are Pirelli and Goodyear.
This is one of the most important things. All the engineering. Another pit stop. Again, coming back in his pit seats. Derek Warwick. He must not have liked the tires that they put on the car.
Here's Barry Gill once again with...
Well, this really is a bad moment for the Renault team. As you see, Warwick's come back in. The reason that front tire that we saw with a lot of problems, they took it off, put another one on, so obviously there's a problem there. There's something wrong in the back of the car. Warwick will not be a happy man, and neither will the Renault mechanics. Back to you, Jackie. Well,
all right, so Derek Warwick back out on the racetrack after making his 2nd pit stop in 2 laps.
Again, showing the importance of tires. You have to understand that the whole design of a Formula One car only has one contact with the road. That's those 4 black patches of where the tire meets the road. And all that aerodynamics, all that power, brakes, everything, suspension design is transmitted through that rubber down to the road.
Well, Nelson Piquet is stretching out his advantage over the McLarens. It is now a 6.5 second interval between 1st and 2nd. and almost a 33-second distance between first and third. Nelson Piquet has without doubt been the star this weekend as we watch Niki Lauda in the number 8 McLaren, sponsored by Marlboro, running in second position. But it has been a great weekend so far for Nelson Piquet, the defending world champion.
All the Goodyear tires in Formula One are actually produced in Akron, Ohio, and air freighted to each event. They can take as many as 2,000 to 3,000 tires to one particular race meeting. Tremendous effort by Goodyear to keep everyone in good shape.
There is Nigel Mansell, who is running now in fourth spot, a lap down. Mansell in fourth in the Lotus. Fifth spot is Arnoux. And sixth is the other Lotus driver, Elio De Angelis. We mention again that live later this afternoon here on ESPN at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. Live coverage of a 200-mile race from Portland, Oregon. The first time that the IndyCars have competed on a road course. In that city, Mario Andretti and Danny Sullivan share the front row, and another IndyCar driver who will be competing in that race, as a matter of fact, won the very first race that was held on this Gilles Villeneuve circuit. We're talking about Howdy Holmes, who raced here in September of 1978 for the North American Formula Atlantic Championship, and Howdy Holmes won that race. Martin Brundle and the other Tyrrell car has come into the pits.
Now they are doing something on the side of the car there. There is a hose. It cannot be fuel.
The question is, what is it?
Well, Barry Gill mentioned earlier, I think some sort of ballast, water ballast.
Water, right.
It must be very important water for them to make those stops for.
60 laps completed now, 10 laps to go in the Canadian Grand Prix. Nelson Piquet has 7-second lead now on Niki Lauda. Back with more coverage from Montreal, Quebec, Canada in just a moment.
Reglementwidriges haben die Tyrrell-Ingenieure immer wieder gesagt. Und die FISA drückt beide Augen zu, obwohl im Grunde genommen jeder weiß, was da wirklich passiert. Der Wagen wird kurz vor Schluss auf das Mindestgewicht gebracht, damit er nicht disqualifiziert werden kann, hat aber bis dahin den Vorteil eines geringeren Kampfgewichts, vor allem gegenüber den Turbos, um das Manko des Leistungshandicaps gegenüber den Turbomotoren ein bisschen auszugleichen. Naja, wenn Nelson Piquet durchfährt, wird Niki Lauda sehr, sehr schwierig haben zu gewinnen, denn der Rückstand ist größer geworden. 7,5 Sekunden und Derek Warwick zum dritten Mal in der Box. Keine Chance mehr für den Engländer, Punkte zu holen. Renault hat sich hier ja ausschließlich auf Derek Warwick konzentrieren können. Zurück zu Niki Lauda, der 7,5 Sekunden hinter Piquet, aber 36 Sekunden vor Alain Prost unverändert Zweiter ist. Alliot, Sura, Lauda, Blackwell. So, Niki Lauda hat gerade die 62. Runde beendet. 8 Runden sind noch zu fahren. Zwischen Piquet und Lauda 7,5 Sekunden und der Rückstand von Prost wird immer größer. Jetzt bereits 47 Sekunden auf Piquet, also 40 Sekunden auf Lauda. Aber immer noch 1 Minute 21 auf den Viertplatzierten, das ist Nigel Mansell, 5. ist De Angelis und 6. ist Eddie Cheever. Ein Alpha könnte also in die Punkte reingekommen, wenn der Treibstoff hält. Die Alpha seit den 4. Plätzen von Gilles und Patrese in den beiden ersten Rennen in Brasilien und in Südafrika ohne Punkte. Beide Lotus heute in den Punkterängen, Menzel 4. und De Angelis 5. Der Vorsprung von McLaren im Parallelbewerb der Konstrukteure wird sich mit einem 2. und 3. Platz vergrößern. Seit 1974 hat McLaren diesen Konstrukteurbewerb nicht mehr gewonnen. Eddie Cheever. Bei Alpha hat es einige Umstellungen gegeben. Der Sportchef von Autotech, der Ingenieur Carlo Chitti, der eigentlich Jahrzehnte schon aus dem Formel-1-Zirkus nicht mehr wegzudenken war, wurde zum Ehrenpräsidenten gemacht. Der neue Rennchef, Direttore Tecnico, wie es bei den Italienern heißt, ist Gianni Conti, der frühere Rennleiter von Lancia in den Langstreckenrennen. Schiebe ist schon einmal in guter Position der Sprit ausgegangen in Imola. Er lag dort an 5. Stelle und wurde noch als 8. gewertet. Der Angelis, den Sie hier im Bild sehen, ist damit übrigens genau das Gleiche passiert. Weiße Flagge, langsamer Wagen auf der Strecke. Niki Lauda vor Nigel Mansell, der an der 5. Stelle liegt, weil unmittelbar vor ihm jetzt in dieser drittletzten Runde Eddie Cheever das Benzin ausgegangen ist. Eddie Cheever, also das erste Benzinopfer dieses Grand Prix von Kanada. Keine Weltmeisterschaftspunkte für den Alpha. Wie befürchtet, der erste Wagen, der ohne Sprit liegen geblieben ist, der Alpha von Eddie Cheever. Nach dem Ausfall von Riccardo Patrese schon vor Halbzeit des Rennens, also auch heute kein Alpha im Ziel. Niki Lauda nach der 67. Runde, 2,5 Runden vor Schluss, 13 Sekunden hinter Nelson Piquet, dem Führenden, und über 1 Minute vor seinem Teamkollegen Alain Prost. Hier haben Sie Prost, der an 3. Stelle liegt. Rückstand auf Lauda sehr groß, über 1 Minute bereits. Vorsprung auf den 4. platzierten Elio De Angelis ebenfalls sehr groß, über 1 Minute 1,27. Prost fährt jetzt extrem benzinsparend und reifenschonend, um seinen 3. Platz ins Ziel zu retten. Sein Vorsprung gegenüber Niki Lauda in der Weltmeisterschaft würde von 10,5 auf 8,
We understand that video has been restored. And we're just in time for the final few laps of this race. Less than 3 to go now. We are watching the McLaren in 2nd position, driven by Niki Lauda, and now the 3rd place car, driven by Alain Prost.
If Alain can hold on to that 3rd place position, he's going to raise his championship points, which of course is the all-important thing as this series progresses across North America, is who's going to be the point leader and at what level going back to the European circuit.
Nelson Piquet's only finish this year was in Belgium, a 10th place finish. He is on his way to a victory here this afternoon if the car can hold up and if the fuel can last. This will be his 11th career win. Last year he won 3 races in winning the World Championship, but as we indicated earlier, it was his consistency that brought home the World Driving title. His first win, as far as a Grand Prix was concerned, was back in 1980, and it was here in the United States, the Grand Prix West.
Nelson, a tremendous personality on the circuit, one of the drivers who makes contact with the public, always willing to give a good interview and try and explain exactly what's going on in his car. Not reserved at all about using one of the 6 languages that he speaks fluently, and it's amazing to be in an interview situation to hear him go from French to Italian to Portuguese to English with the greatest of ease.
We're watching René Arnoux there for just a short time. He is now running in 6th spot, 2 laps down to the leader. Once again, back up front to the leader of the race, Nelson Piquet.
He's just hoping that everything keeps going now. The taste of victory is in his body, and all he wants to do is make sure that everything holds together so that it becomes a delicious meal.
And we believe this is the final circuit of the course. The starter did raise his finger indicating one more lap to go, so if Nelson can guide his car around the 2.74-mile course, he will win his first race of 1984 and his 11th career victory.
Bernie Eccleston will be very pleased. Bernie, the head of FOCA, Formula One Constructors Organization, has done a great job of raising Formula One to the standards that we currently enjoy around the world.
You can see the fans beginning to anticipate the victory by Nelson Piquet, as several of them have raised their hands in cheering him around this race course. Good close shot of Piquet as he maneuvers his car through the S's, now onto the back straightaway. He'll be heading towards turn number 14 and number 15 here. And after going through those S's, we'll move on to another straightaway. And then under the Parmalat Bridge, he is nearing at this point turn number 16, the final one on the course, the hairpin. Coming up here in just a moment, you can see him downshift and brake hard. Here he is into the hairpin, turn number 16. He comes off of the corner onto the straightaway, and here is the checkered flag. Nelson Piquet from Brazil has won the Canadian Grand Prix. The McLaren string will not continue here. Of course, they have won all but now 2 races this year, as Alboreto won in a Ferrari earlier, and now the Brabham of Nelson Piquet comes home in the winner's circle. And as far as points are concerned, Prost will maintain his lead in the World Championship, as he will get credit for 3rd position if everything goes here as they are right now on this final lap. Niki Lauda will be 2nd in the World Driving Championship points with 24. Then our new Warwick, DeAngelis, and Rosberg.
Really a fantastic drive by Nelson. Look at him, he's very happy, hoping that the luck has changed, coming back his way. Tremendous effort by those loving Brabham mechanics who are very eager to get to Detroit and Dallas. Fantastic exhilaration to the team. I was talking to the mechanics earlier, and they say that morale was a bit down, but this will certainly bring them back to carry on hopefully another victorious strength throughout the rest of the season.
So it was about a 9.5-second victory, according to unofficial statistics, for Nelson Piquet. Lauda 2nd, and Alain Prost 3rd. Elio DeAngelis was a lap down in 4th spot, and Nigel Mansell was in 5th, 2 laps down. 3 cars were on the lead lap at the end of the contest. There is Mansell, right ahead of Nelson Piquet, who is on his cool-off lap, so to speak, receiving the congratulations of the thousands of fans who have gathered around this course. There are 26,300 grandstand seats. All of them were filled for today's race, plus there are several other thousand people standing along the fences and in the middle, in the park area of the circuit. And there is our new, who is out of gas.
That's what you call calling it close.
That's right. Just enough to cross the finish line, and that's all you need, though. Piquet, meanwhile, has pulled into the pits. The other cars are in front of him, so it'll be a few minutes before he can make his way to victory circle. But Piquet celebrating his first win of 1984. He was 22nd here last year at the Canadian Grand Prix. This was his 85th Formula One race.
Adversário e colega de equipa. Depois no terceiro lugar, René Arnoux com 16,5. DeAngelis no quarto com 15,5. Quinto lugar para Warwick com 13, Rosberg com 11, Piquet e Alboreto, ambos com 9, Patrick também com 7 e Nigel Mansell com 5. Nelson Piquet com dificuldades num pé. E, curiosamente, o Jacques Deschenaux diz que o Piquet não está habituado a terminar corridas e, portanto, deve ter o esforço, deve tê-lo feito sofrer câimbras num pé. A verdade é que o Nelson Piquet está a tirar uma bota sentado no chão, uma situação um pouco caricata. Relativamente às marcas, o Campeonato do Mundo de Construtores está com a seguinte classificação: a McLaren bem lá na frente, 56,5 pontos, depois a Ferrari com 35,5, a Lotus com 20,5, quarta é a Renault com 20, quinta Williams com 11, a sexta a Brabham com 9, a sétima a Tyrrell com 7 e a oitava a Alfa Romeo com 6 pontos. Cá está Piquet, já com um pé descalço. À sétima corrida, Nelson Piquet termina e ganha mostra a John Smith, o comissário desportivo holandês da FISA, o seu pé. John Smith diz-lhe que ele deve ir para a zona do pódio. Lauda e Nelson, dois bons amigos. Aliás, dois pilotos que se admiram. Nelson Piquet, de certa maneira, exuberante com este triunfo. Após uma série de insucessos, ele finalmente consegue um triunfo, tendo feito uma corrida digna de um campeão do mundo. Está a classificação do Campeonato do Mundo, tal como lhes tinha referido. Arnoux no terceiro lugar. E De Angelis vem marcando pontos aos poucos e já tem 15,5 pontos. Não é mau para o piloto da Lotus Renault. Menos bom para Warwick, que naturalmente teria grandes aspirações e que não consegue melhor do que 13 pontos. E uma quinta posição. Alain Prost. Alain Prost, terceiro desta corrida, enfim, marcou alguns pontos, mas o piloto francês anseia ardentemente ser campeão do mundo. O facto de ter hoje ficado atrás de Niki Lauda poderá ter constituído uma certa contrariedade para o francês da McLaren. Por outro lado, terá constituído uma boa indicação quanto ao austríaco da mesma marca. Dois companheiros de trabalho que se entendem bastante bem, mas entre os quais existe uma certa rivalidade que nem sequer é desmentida por qualquer deles. E encaminhamos-nos para o final desta transmissão em diferido que estamos a efetuar acerca do Grande Prémio do Canadá. Recordo-lhes que de hoje a uma semana e também em transmissão diferida haverá uma outra corrida do Campeonato do Mundo, a oitava é o Grande Prémio dos Estados Unidos, Detroit. Uma corrida disputada em cidade num circuito relativamente apertado. Aguarda-se a chegada à zona do pódio de Nelson Piquet, Niki Lauda e Alain Prost, três categorizados pilotos e três candidatos potenciais ao título, um título que Piquet ostenta e que é cobiçado naturalmente por qualquer dos seus dois adversários. Tanto Prost como Niki Lauda estão em muito boas condições para o obter. Nelson Piquet estará menos bem. E tem a classificação final de Lauda, Prost, De Angelis, Arnoux e Mansell. Arnoux conseguiu subir um lugar mesmo no final que acontecem em quase todos os grandes prémios. Piquet a ser transportado para a zona do pódio, ele está com dificuldades em caminhar. E lá está o pódio formado. Niki Lauda, Nelson Piquet ao centro, Alain Prost, o terceiro classificado. Lauda parece brincar com o pé de Piquet.
Nelson Piquet in a flag-to-flag victory here at the Canadian Grand Prix. Nelson, it looked like you out there in your old style with the mechanics going well. How do you feel about your win here?
Well, it's very good to win a race after so many bad finish. I knew the car was very competitive. I showed the car was on the quickest car. I showed I couldn't, I still can do, and it was very good.
Now, Nelson, everyone saw a modified nose cone that allowed for a heater up front for the oil. Is this what gave you the foot problems? You have a burned foot here.
Yes, it was too much heat and under the feet.
So what are you going to do with Dallas? Will you change the radiator back, do you believe?
I don't know.
Nelson, you're tired. Thank you very much, and best of luck for the rest of the season.
Well, tired he may be, but he's very happy. Nelson Piquet wins a Grand Prix in 1984 at last, but the McLarens were still there in second and third places, and Alain Prost and Niki Lauda add to their points total.